This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 8th of September 2020 and I am 2J.
I am JM.
And I am GK. In case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, 8 governors on graft hit list. In the Standard, who's killing Nut?
Yep.
And in the Star, we have Raila ready to roll out aggressive 2022 campaign and other stories. Let's begin there.
Yes, so ODM leader Raila Odinga, we're told, has embarked on an aggressive charm offensive campaign to consolidate his voter base ahead of the 2022 polls. He is expected to run for president in 2022. And the Star notes that the Deputy President, William RUTO, has begun to return to his usual church functions on Sundays, as well as addressing roadside rallies. So in essence, they're telling us that politics is back, campaign season is back, and folks are out there.
Gosh, so for Raila, will fifth time be a charm?
Oh,
we
my
wonder.
goodness.
What's interesting though is when they say aggressive, I really thought they were going to call out the current mudslinging that's happening. There's a lot of things being said, and I think Kenyans should refuse to be dragged into some of these fights where people are talking about other people's mothers and things like that. I think we need to really have an honest conversation in this electoral season that will move us forward as a country and move away from the politics of fear.
But if anything, I think it's about time that Baba Man took to the streets. I think people have been waiting to understand from his own mouth what this BBI is really about. And I think as much as they may dish out a report, I think it's easier for it to come from his mouth because he can articulate it in a way that people will get. And linking to the Daily Nation from yesterday, where we just learned that Raila has a new voting bloc of 9.3 million voters, I think it's a perfect time for him to begin engaging people who will eventually vote for him in 2022. So good on him.
I'm very intrigued about this new voting bloc. The Star also points out that he's keen to penetrate and win over the regions that have traditionally opposed him. And particularly here he's talking about Mount Kenya, the backyard, which is already split for whatever reason.
True.
So we have a 3-part criteria that we will use to break down the headlines. We'll ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy? If we move to the Daily Nation now, we're being told that 8 governors are on EACC's hit list for corruption.
The EACC has been very busy lately.
They have been.
COVID's been good for them.
COVID has been good. They've had all the time to investigate. So they say 8 governors. Among them is Anne Waiguru, Mohammed Ali of Marsabit, Amason Kingi of Kilifi, Alex Tolgos of Elgeyo Marakwet, Ali Korane Garissa, Wangamati, Charity Ngilu, Mwangi wa Iria. And so the article just goes on and outlines various things that they're looking to investigate. For Waiguru, the scrutiny for her continues with the 77 million shillings Mwea Makima water project, which apparently was assigned or awarded to a family member of someone in her administration. For Bungoma, we have jerry cans for 10,000 bob. I don't know if the economic argument here works, willing buyer, willing seller. But that's basically it for the Daily Nation. I feel like Uhuru, this is the first time he's overseeing devolution of this kind, a decentralized system. And so I feel like his governors, to some extent, are tarnishing his legacy when it comes to this. Because, you want to be able to come out of this and say, my reign had a successful devolution program. But corruption is tarnishing the good
definitely
work.
Yeah, I think there has to be a lesson learned here. I think of his 2 terms, as you're saying, devolution has not necessarily been 100% successful. So what measures can we put in place as we go forward to ensure that procurement needs are met, that governors know how to do proper accounting.
There's fiscal responsibility.
There has to be a lesson learned here at some point.
Because otherwise the 47 counties, the way they run, it's a big win if we can make it successful.
Yes.
Let's move to the Standard. Who is killing
Nut? Yes, we have some education in the headlines today. Basically, we're being told that the Giant Teachers Union has lost over 130,000 members and 1 billion shillings in 15 months. I think this is a combination of some of the strikes that were happening before, the negotiations between the teachers union, the government, but then also the onset of COVID.
Yeah.
So we see that a lot of their members have jumped ship. They're having to auction out their assets. In fact, I was quite surprised to find out that the union has a monthly operation budget of 144 million across 110 branches. A payroll of 80 million for more than 700 staff, and that 60% of the monthly remittance from the TSC, the Teacher Service Commission, has been used to, run these other programs. So I think they're struggling quite a bit. But this got me thinking about whose role it is to bail out unions. So I think unions, as we understand, are a voluntary, conglomeration of people within a certain industry.
Who have the same interest.
Exactly, the same interest. They want to have a leg to stand on. So it's not necessarily the government's role to do so. However, what I think is important is that the government is able to keep that specific industry running and thriving. And I think in the past 15 months, as they say, we have seen these scuttles between the government and the education industry as a whole. So maybe the government also needs to step up in its own right.
And to answer the standards question, if the TSC is not funding NUT anymore, aren't they effectively killing it because money follows function, and you're essentially saying NUT is no longer important to you?
Yes.
Interesting. So who do we give our winning headline? Is there a winning headline?
I'm not particularly inspired.
Exactly.
I was not inspired by any of them, so we're just gonna
toss them all.
Toss them all. No winning headline. But onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a 3-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy? If we begin with the Standard.
In the Standard, here we have somebody who, a hospital patient in critical care, bandaged up with a drip, I think that's blood, and the patient's name is Opposition, really badly messed up. However, it does not show us who the face of Opposition is, and I think maybe that's also what Gado is trying to get at.
Well, we know it used to be Raila.
We knew it used to be Raila, but now it's become RUTO.
RUTO.
Exactly. Who's Opposition anymore? But whoever the Opposition is, it's they are dead on arrival.
And someone should take up this mantle. The opposition plays a really crucial role in many governments across the world, because that's who keeps the government in check. Otherwise, we free fall.
But hasn't the deputy president already taken up this mantle?
Has he? He gives interviews where he's still praising his boss and saying that all is well in the House of Jubilee.
And if the role of opposition is to, call names to other people's mothers, is that really a successful opposition?
No. Don't think so. Shall we toss it?
Oh yes, toss it.
We're tossing it. It's not a little bit.
Nope.
Okay, what do we have in the Star?
In the Star, we have the dancing pallbearers from the Ministry of Health. They're dressed in PPEs and they're carrying a coffin representing COVID-19 victims. And the caption there is a lyric from Justin Bieber's song Sorry.
Are you going to sing it for us?
Is it too late now to say sorry?
Yeah, that's it.
Production, help on that.
So this could be implying two things. One, that Ministry of Health's response to the pandemic and the handling of funds could be responsible for some of the COVID deaths. Or on a slightly more optimistic tone, it could also be referring to the revised burial guidelines that will allow family members to bury their kin after research has now found that dead COVID-19 patients cannot transmit the virus.
And I
so
think
the Ministry of Health is supposed to be drawing up these new guidelines, and then people can be sending off their loved ones in a very dignified
Honestly,
manner.
Kenyans are such a pessimistic lot. If you were to look at the cases that this country has, we are on track to do so well. I think currently we have had over 33,000 confirmed cases, of which over 24,000 have recovered. That is over 2/3. So I think that we need to really put things into perspective to understand how well we're doing. On deaths, we're doing far better than most countries, Western included. So I think we also need to look on the bright side.
That is the bright side. On the flip side, though, context. Are we testing nearly as much as we should be,
Very true as well.
But I like the idea that they're revising these guidelines. I watched a COVID-19 patient funeral and it was just horrible. So if they're revising it to have more dignity,
all the better.
All the better. Okay, so we have one last cartoon from the Daily Nation. And we have a relay race or a race of some kind with a long limo, and in it is Baba Man in a green shirt. And in the back of the limo, you have Anne Waiguru, James Orengo, Atwoli, Morave, and they look very happy with themselves. And on the other side of the car, in another car is the Hustler's Clerk car. And there you have DP and all his allies in yellow T-shirts. And then you have a guy saying, on your marks, get set, start early campaigns.
I think this is a really funny cartoon. What I love the most is how he's depicted DP's camp. They all look so disorganized and confused.
Squashed in a little car. Hustler's Clerk.
Exactly, and the DP is crying as usual. Become a bit of a crybaby these days.
We should toss it.
We should toss it?
Toss it.
Yeah, I quite like the COVID-19 one.
Yeah?
That's the one we should go for.
All right, fair enough.
There we have it. The star gives us our winning cartoon. And now for our final thought, but before we get there, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And now our final thought, inspired this week by history's most controversial leaders. Today we look at The Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun, written by Wes Roberts. So Attila the Hun was a 5th century king of the Hunnic Empire. He was born in Pannonia, a province of the Roman Empire, which is modern-day Hungary. So Attila the Hun and his brother Bleda were named co-rulers of the Huns in 434. But Attila decided to consolidate power and he murdered his brother, to become the sole ruler of the Huns, and then expanded his rule of the Huns over the Eastern and Western Europe while attacking and extracting. So first-hand accounts of him describe the savage screaming and other strange noises that his people would make as they attacked their victims on horseback, slashing and stabbing them. So the Huns were viewed as such barbarians that Attila's name was synonymous with destruction, chaos and slaughter. He became known as the Scourge of God. Scourge means terror, so he was the terror of God. And he was so feared that rulers would hand over large payments of money just so that they could be left alone. So in exchange for peace, for example, the Romans would forge to him an annual tribute of 700 pounds of gold. That's about 200 million shillings worth of gold. A few years later, Attila asserted that the Romans had not kept up their end of the bargain. So he launched this vicious attack through Eastern Roman territories, forcing an increase of this fee to 2,100 pounds of gold per year. So it is in this context that Roberts draws from one of history's most effective but least beloved leaders. And so of course the question is, why would anybody write a leadership book about somebody like Attila the Hun? And so to answer that question, I will take a quote directly from the author himself. He says, Attila the Hun is a dubious character upon whom to base a metaphor on leadership. He's portrayed throughout history as a barbaric, ugly little tyrant whose hordes, in total disregard of principles of conservation, ruthlessly destroyed the beautiful and tranquil countryside of Europe. And so typically leadership books, of course, are based on the lives of accomplished, socially acceptable men and women who have reached the pinnacle achievement in their specific area. But he says that Attila is an unlikely role model for anyone to emulate. But as he shows in this book, Attila actually presents a really compelling and interesting forum to discuss a primer in leadership. A lot of the things that he did, I think it's almost 2,000 years ago, are still applicable today because they're very simple. And so I think that 3 overarching principles of this book can be summarized as follows: the essentials of decisiveness, the art of delegation, and the importance of lessons learned. So very quickly, the essentials of decisiveness. It's shown in records that Attila wrote himself on leadership. He said that wise is the chieftain who never makes a decision when he does not understand the issue. In decision making, valor is guided by prudence. So courage is guided by prudence. On the art of delegation, he said, wise chieftains grant both authority and responsibility to those they have delegated assignments. So you have to give responsibility to those that you hand over assignments to. And finally, the relevance of lessons learned. Attila once stated, the dreaded enemy used tactics unfamiliar to our noble warriors. Many of our brave hands were lost in a battle for which I simply had not prepared them to fight. So leaders are charged with the responsibility of never making the same mistake twice, right? They are expected to incorporate those mechanisms of improving their team for future battles. So I think in quite a barbaric person, you can, pick out some lessons. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'll expound on those lessons. He was an incredible leader, it would appear. And according to the author, just to kind of give context to the lessons here from Attila, tribes rise and fall on the strength of their leaders and on the ability with which their leaders carry out their responsibilities of office. And so I'll read just about 9 excerpts from a console by the campfire speech that Attila gave to his senior management, so to speak, in modern day terms. And so let me list them for you one by one. Okay, so number 1, chieftains are responsible for establishing the atmosphere in which they lead. Number 2, by their actions, not their words, do leaders establish the morale, integrity and sense of justice of their subordinate commanders. Number 3, leaders must establish a high spirit of mutual trust amongst subordinates and with their peers and superiors. Number 4, leaders must have no tolerance for the uncommitted. Number 5, leaders must expect continual improvement in their subordinates. Number 6, leaders must encourage creativity and innovation amongst their subordinates as long as they are consistent with the goals of the tribe. Number 7, chieftains gain greater recognition and booty from the nation. Therefore, more is expected from them than from the people.
Booty being treasure.
Yes, that's right. Number 8, and this is something the professor says, chieftains must inspect what they expect. Number 9, chieftains must understand that the spirit of the law is greater than its letter. And he finishes all these sort of lessons by saying, these things I have told you this night are the secrets to leadership success at any level of office. They may seem to you to be common knowledge. Alas, they may be, but they are not so common in practice till today. So all over those 9 lessons, quite useful.
Very important. So in chapter 6 of the book, they talk about the importance of paying and receiving respect. They call it deference. And so they say that Attila was very well schooled, firstly in the power of rumor. So he really played upon the fact that he was called the scourge of God or the scourge of God. This scary, barbaric man, but he knew it would work for him on the battlefield and in negotiations. So he was very quick to adopt it. So that's one lesson. If the rumor works for you, perpetuate that legend for yourself. And so one of the things that he talks about when we're talking about respect, things that we can learn from Attila, it's that when respect is born of fear, it results in an unwillingness to serve and becomes manifested as passive resistance to authority and purpose. And it leads to subversion and sabotage and generally low morale among those who you intend to lead. So he says you should aim for the real respect, which will result in unyielding loyalty and a tribe full of spirit and those willing to follow you into the mouth of hell for the cause of the nation. And he says that there are subtle aspects of paying and receiving respect that will make the deciding difference between one who leads by notoriety and one who leads with nobility. And these are the aspects of that. Always accept the responsibility and privilege of your office and take it very seriously. So never exercise your authority to the disadvantage of your subordinates. And the other thing is, you are your reputation, like I've just said. If people speak evil of you or attribute misdeeds to you, you must do away with those adversaries. It isn't easy being the scourge of God, but it has its advantages in dealing with the enemy. However, among Attila's people, he didn't want that reputation of being barbaric. For if they perceive him as being wicked, then he could no longer rule them as their leader. And then there's another one, which may be for our political class. The respect that attends any office of leadership is confirmed by custom, yet it is modified by circumstance. So always be aware of where you are and whom you are when you're exercising your privileges of your leadership position. And then another one is any promotion will require an adjustment on your part, as well as on the part of those who remember you in your former role. And maybe this is advice to vice presidents, those trying to go up the ladder, you know, have patience with yourself and others. You're trying to transition to a new role and people are still seeing you in your existing one, right? And then to the wider general Kenyan political class, pay respect to your adversaries. Once you fail to do this, you fail to recognize their abilities, their influence, and their potential. And this means that they may then gain advantage over you. So just as when Theodosius underestimated Attila when he invaded the Roman territory, Attila was very wary of his own importance, noting that he would not underestimate the power of the Romans to still have influence over the Han nation. So just food for thought there. So on a day where we had no winning headline, but a winning cartoon from the start, I want to leave you with this, a quote from Attila the Hun. Do not underestimate the power of an enemy, no matter how great or small, to rise against you another day. So please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, but find us on TV. We're on GoTV, paying free to air.